Welcome back to When Bad Things Happen to Good People, a podcast about censorship and the arts. My name is Todd Sullivan. Joining me as always is Mr. Peter Ramin.
Hello, hello.
And today we are talking about Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator. How's it going?
Not too bad, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Right on.
Doing pretty well. It's a beautiful day here.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I feel like the last time I came over to your place to record, there was like still snow on the ground, and now like the sun is out.
Yeah, well, we had kind of like a spring sunny period, then it got cold again.
Yeah.
And that's like been a week or two.
Exactly, yeah.
That's welcome to spring in Canada.
It's been a very dramatic few weeks.
Yeah. No, but I'm doing good. Yeah, ready to talk a little bit about this movie. I think this is one of the oldest movies we've ever looked at.
I think it might be, yeah. The one thing I do want to say before we start talking about the movie is that this is not the movie that we were hinting at on the last episode.
No.
We're still trying to make that one come together. Part of the issue is that it does involve a guest. And so it's a matter of just trying to organize the schedules of three very busy people.
Yeah.
And that has not worked out so far. And we decided to sneak in an extra episode so that we didn't have such a long wait between episodes as we have had in the recent past. We're trying to get around that. So today we're going to talk about the Great Dictator.
I mean, seems a little bit apropos.
It does. There may have been reasons that it occurred to me. Part of it was it occurred to me that this episode is going to be falling, close to April Fool's Day, potentially. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking it would be fun to do a comedy just because, April Fool's Day. And also we don't do a lot of comedic band things.
Yeah.
I also have to admit, I have actually never seen a Charlie Chaplin film before. So I felt like this was, a good addition to my, film vocabulary, my awareness of film. And
it's a talkie. So
it is
maybe a bit different from the regular Charlie Chaplin experience.
True. Yeah. This was the first talkie he did, right?
Yeah. I wasn't necessarily ready for that. I mean, seeing the year as 1940 for the film, I was kind of like, okay, but like the Charlie Chaplin kind of film that I saw that kind of sticks in my mind was City Lights, which is like a silent film. Obviously there's music, but it's got the titles that pop up
of course,
that whole deal. So to see kind of like a talkie and it's more modern, really, than that kind of style. So, but I found it really interesting to hear Chaplin speak.
Yeah,
he speaks throughout,
and
plays multiple characters.
Yeah. And we'll get more to that. But I have to say too that, especially for the era, I was quite impressed by the variation in performances between the two characters.
Yeah.
I think if it wasn't for the fact that he maintained that iconic Chaplin mustache. / Hitler
both characters,
mustache on both characters, I might have been inclined to think that they were two different actors.
Yeah,
but it's given the way they look, it's pretty obvious.
I mean,
and eventually it becomes important that they both have that mustache, even though the movie starts with saying like, "There's no, it's just a coincidence."
It's a coincidence, but I mean,
which I guess it is in the story.
It ends up being a plot piece.
It does, yeah.
But I think what surprised me a little bit is, like from silent film era, it is far more expressive and body language. Whereas, in the talkies, your tone of voice and how you speak,
you can have a subtler performance.
Yeah. And it has a big impact on how the movie plays out.
Yeah.
And not only that, but going to now play two different characters, ideologically opposed essentially,
much, yeah.
And to pull that off and to still include all the kind of slapstick silent movie kind of bits in there, like, I mean, what a really impressive feat.
Totally.
For the time, it's pretty amazing actually. So excited to talk about this.
Yes. Let's first turn to Wikipedia for some details on the film itself. It's a 1940 American political satire black comedy film. Written, directed, produced by, and starring Charlie Chaplin, credited as Charles Chaplin
Yes.
in the film. Having been the only Hollywood filmmaker to continue to make silent films well into the period of sound films, Chaplin made this his first true sound film. Chaplin's film advanced a stirring condemnation of the German and Italian dictators Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, as well as fascism, anti-Semitism, and Nazism. At the time of its release, the United States was still at peace with Nazi Germany and neutral during what were the early days of World War II. Chaplin plays both leading roles, a ruthless fascist dictator and a persecuted Jewish barber. The Great Dictator was popular with audiences, becoming Chaplin's most commercially successful film. Modern critics have praised it as a historically significant film, one of the greatest comedy films ever made, and an important work of satire. In 1997, it was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. The Great Dictator was nominated for 5 Academy Awards.
As a comedy.
Outstanding production, best actor, best writing, original screenplay, best supporting actor for Jack Oakey, and best music original score. I'm going to have to check and see who Jack Oakey played.
I think he was Napolini.
He was.
Yeah.
Benzino Napoleoni.
Yeah, they really left you guessing
The
with those names.
Digadici of bacteria.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, these character names are amazing too. I just want to go through them for a moment for the people of the palace. Charlie Chaplin was Adenoid Hinkle, the dictator, also known as Fooey of Tomania.
Not Führer.
Yeah, Führer, that's exactly what it was. Man, you're nailing these faster than I could. Jack Oakey was, as we said, Benzino Napoleoni, the Digadici of bacteria, or I guess that's the Il Duce of Italy. Reginald Gardner was Commander Schultz, who was a Tomanian who fought in World War I. Does it say who he was supposed to be? Not really.
I don't know of a historical kind of counterpart for that character.
He's probably just
more
a
plot
general
driven
reference.
Yeah.
We have Garbage, the parody of Joseph Goebbels. We have Billy Gilbert as Herring, a parody of Hermann Göring.
Yeah.
We have Madame Napoleoni, the wife of Benzino. And then we have Spook, the Bacterian ambassador. Now, this film was obviously banned in Germany.
And all German-occupied territories at the time.
Yeah. It was also banned in some Latin American countries. It also says... Yeah, the film had been banned in many parts of Europe, and the theaters... Oh, what is this? Sorry, I'm going to start from the beginning again. The film was banned in several Latin American countries where there were active movements of Nazi sympathizers. During the film's production, the British government had announced that it would prohibit its exhibition in the United Kingdom in keeping with its appeasement policy concerning Nazi Germany. But by the time the film was released, the UK was at war with Germany, and the film was welcomed in part for its obvious propaganda value. In 1941, London's Prince of Wales Theatre screened its UK premiere. The film had been banned in many parts of Europe, and the theatre's owner, Alfred Esdale, was apparently fined for showing it.
Oh. What about stateside?
Yeah, I read somewhere, and I can't get that up in my search now, but I read somewhere that it was banned in Chicago initially, and it was because of a large German population there. It also says that the film influenced numerous directors, including Stanley Kubrick, Mel Brooks, Wes Anderson, and Chuck Jones, which I can kind of see. In fact...
The Mel Brooks side, I see.
Definitely.
Sure,
and I think the Stanley Kubrick side, I'm inclined to think there was almost, it almost ended, what the film? Dr. Strangelove.
Oh, okay.
Almost ended with a food fight, which I kind of feel like was maybe inspired by, there's a food fight scene.
There is a food fight scene
in this film as well. That's quite good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Let's talk about the movie itself. My notes are kind of garbage. I have a lot of them, but it's mostly just my stream of consciousness thoughts on everything that happens as we go along.
Well, I like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some plot kind of notes, but I mean, the movie is, even though it's a talkie, it is very visual. I mean, there's still a lot of slapstick comedy, still a lot of he almost kind of looks at the camera sometimes, right? Like just in terms of when things don't go his way, or like
well, I almost feel
unexpected happens. Like it's quite humorous,
especially the first like 20 to 30 minutes. Almost just seems like setups for gags.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like so, first it's World War I. We have Charlie Chaplin, who at this point he's playing this Jewish barber, but he's on the front lines of the war.
Yeah, he's just a soldier at this point.
Just a soldier.
Yeah. Well, he's the trigger man for the giant cannon that they have.
That was huge.
Yeah.
Were there actually cannons that big during World War I? I kind of want to say yes, but like,
I mean, there must have been some, right? Like
that didn't look like entirely a prop.
No,
like it looked solid.
It looked pretty big.
So yeah, so they're loading in ammunition to this giant gun, and he's the guy sort of like yanking the string and launching the bomb. It blows up an outhouse.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, we got to recalibrate the numbers, and they redirect it. They load in another bomb, pulls the string. Like,
nothing happens. And then
it just sort of like
the shell kind of slowly comes out and falls out and just lands in the ground right in front. And like, I mean, just from the start too, like him pulling the string and like, it's all very slapstick and what's going on. And it's just like, very, very kind of like old school Charlie Chaplin.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then, they make him investigate, and it kind of like, the shell spins around on the ground following his movement. And it
starts sparking like it's about to go off.
Yeah.
And so everybody has to like
run,
hold their hats onto their head and comically run away.
Yeah.
Then he climbs into, there's great big
anti-aircraft gun with like a pilot or a turret man seat or whatever.
So he climbs in that, and it starts spinning around, and he starts spinning around upside down
and like pointing at their unit and all over the place.
Then they
decide they need to like form ranks and go after the enemy.
Yes.
And so then they all line up, and
everyone gets
Chaplin's
their hand grenades.
The hand grenades. He drops the hand grenade down his uniform.
Sewn sleeve. He pulls it. He puts his arm back to throw it, and then it slides down his sleeve, and he's trying to find it in his shirt and his pants and in his everywhere.
Yeah.
Pulls it out. Finally, flings it and explodes just off the screen.
Yeah. With moments to spare.
Always there's moments to spare.
And then he faints and
then they push forward.
Yeah.
In through like
the fog of war. Yeah. And he gets lost in the fog.
Yeah.
And then he ends up, the fog kind of clears, and he's marching with some guys, but they're the enemy. And he's kind of like looking around like, oh, and he throws his gun and runs away, and they start chasing him. And it's just like, I mean, the gags are pretty nonstop in the opening. It's pretty funny. And then he finds like, an officer that's manning a gun, and this is Commander Schultz, so we don't really know it yet. And so he's like, take over. I got to get these dispatches,
Yes.
wherever. And so Charlie's shooting at the enemy, and then they're shooting at him and knock his helmet off. And he's kind of like, oh, I'm out of here. And then, they get in the plane.
Yeah, well, Schultz gets wounded, right?
Yeah, he gets hit through
Chaplin
the doorway.
Has to sort of drag him out to the plane.
Yeah.
They get him in the plane. They take off.
Yeah. Well, he's like, I don't think I can fly, so you're going to have to come with me.
Yes, right.
And they get it up in the air. And some more hilarious gags where they're flying upside down.
Yeah, Schultz is constantly like, oh, I think I'm about to faint.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this long bit where the plane is upside down, but it's being filmed as if it's right side up.
Yeah.
And so Chaplin's in the plane, and his pocket watch
keeps
flies out. He's like,
up.
oh, interesting. We're
he's like, water. And he opens the canteen.
And it's all spilling past. It's like, we're defying the laws of gravity. He's like, and he has to unbuckle his seatbelt and flies out. He's like, oh, no. Oh, it's because we're upside down. I figured it out now.
Yeah. But it is a nonstop kind of gag reel.
Pretty much.
During a pretty gritty war. But
exactly.
So they are upside down. They figure that out. And then they run out of gas.
They run out of fuel.
Yeah. Because why not? And then they crash into kind of like a swamp area. And Schultz survives pretty much unscathed, whereas Chaplin's character, the barber soldier guy, gets thrown into kind of a mud pit.
Yeah.
And they drag him out. But the dispatches were too late. The war is over. That's lost. Right.
Although Schultz does say, I wrote this one down, quick, take me to General Smellawful, which is our first comedic name that came up. I had to make note of General Smellawful.
I must have missed that one. But so they haul Chaplin out of the mud, though, and take him to, some kind of military hospital.
And they find out that they've lost the war. The war is now over.
Yeah.
They lost.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure at this point in the film who they were, what side they were on.
Yeah, I think they had said Tomania near the start, like when they were on the big gun, like for the
Perhaps,
glory of Tomania.
But
or
I
something,
probably at that point didn't even really know what Tomania was.
Yeah.
Tomania in the film is sort of a stand-in for Germany.
Yeah.
Right. So he's off to a hospital. We find out later that he has had some amount of amnesia.
Yeah. Where he can only kind of remember
from before
like about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So he keeps kind of repeating 2 weeks over and over again.
Yeah.
So he keeps writing letters saying he's coming home to take over his barbershop like every couple weeks.
Right.
Because that's all he can remember.
Yeah.
But during this time, things in Tomania have been changing.
Yes. We're introduced to Adolph Hitler, who is this rising leader in Tomania and clearly modeled after Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
The first time we see him is he's holding a giant rally, giving this super long speech.
In like a funny, like, imitative German.
Yeah.
Like it's actually pretty funny.
I think it would be really fun to sort of go over all of the make believe German in this movie, like with a fine tooth comb, and because there's all sorts of little hidden phrases in there.
Yeah.
My favorite bit in this speech was like he's listing off all of these things, and I can't remember what they were, but it was like this thing stunks.
Yeah.
This thing stunks.
Yeah. And then the voiceover, like the kind of newsreel translator guy is like, this is objectionable. This is odious. Like it's always a different translation.
They're correcting it to him and making him sound smarter than just saying that it stinks over and over and over again. And I also made note of the fact that at this point in the film, Chaplin's performance really reminded me of how Mike Myers does physical comedy, especially with the faces and all of that sort of stuff. I thought this could be Mike Myers playing this character practically.
And then it just gets very slapsticky. So the guy playing Goring or Herring, I guess, in the movie, he's like, we have to tighten our belts. And so he stands up and he tightens his belt and then it snaps off.
Yeah.
And it's all very, very lampoonish, which is great. And then he gets knocked down the stairs and
he has this long sequence where he's just yelling into the microphones, and the microphones themselves are responding, like they're wilting and pulling back. And then the translator was just like, and His Excellency has just referred to the Jewish people.
Yeah.
That's all they say, but very clearly not in a very positive way. And then he rambles off a bunch more things, and the translator says, and for the rest of the world, he has nothing but peace in mind, which not based on the tone of his voice, but just let people believe that.
That's right.
Also, I heard repeated uses of the word banana in his fake German.
Yeah, so when he falls down the stairs and
that's right, banana.
And so, I mean, what happens is Herring kind of bends over to kiss some lady's hand.
Yeah.
And like
bum knocks him over.
Bum knocks him down the stairs. And then
classic slap.
Yeah. And then, he comes down and they're yelling at each other and it's just banana.
Yeah. Back in the day when you just let your lead actor roll himself down a set of stairs for comedy.
That's right. Yeah. Well, when they're also the director, I guess.
I guess so. He can decide.
Yeah. But it very much reminded me a little bit of like the Minions when they're all like banana.
Yes, exactly. And there was also a cheese and cracker in one of them.
He gets in the car with Garbage.
Yeah.
And Garbage is kind of like, I think you should have been more violent around the Jews. And he's like, really? More violent? Okay. And like, that's kind of where the scene ends. And you're like, man, like this movie's coming out of the gates pretty lampoonish. But I mean, at this point, it's pretty lighthearted and gag heavy.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can kind of tell that there's some trouble brewing here just with that remark. Like, you should have been more violent.
Yes, exactly. Because he asks for feedback. Like, how was my speech?
Yeah.
Then we cut to basically it's a little
the ghetto.
Yeah,
there's even a screen I think that pops up saying like the ghetto.
Yes, fair enough. And there's a couple of the Jewish dudes who are hanging out and they're chatting about how tough things have been.
Yeah. Well, the first guy comes in, he's like, "Good morning," and he's like, "What's so good about it?" Like, and it just devolves into. Then the first guy's like, "Yeah, I guess it's not a good morning."
Yep,
because they're talking about all their troubles in the ghetto. And then and the ghetto, is the Jewish settlement in Tomania.
Yes. And then we meet this young woman who I didn't catch her name.
Hannah.
Hannah? Okay.
Yeah.
I called her Laundry Lady, aka LL. She's been here doing laundry. I don't know if she's doing her own laundry or if it's...
No, it's for other people.
It's for other people,
She has a little business.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's off to bring the laundry back to the people who are paying her for it.
Yeah.
When she encounters some of the, the stormtroopers.
Stormtroopers, yeah. And they're called stormtroopers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think is what they were called in Nazi Germany as well. But it's, as a Star Wars fan, it's hard to hear that and not
be like, oh.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of... Yeah.
That's the reference that Star Wars was going for.
Kind
of
the reference, right?
Yeah. So the Nazi soldiers or the stormtroopers are sort of, singing and breaking things.
Yeah, they have this song
food.
that's like Aryan.
Yes.
You're just like, oh my God. I mean, it would it's funny now given the time and distance, but at the time I wonder like how that would have really hit home, in the US or wherever, if it was really understood what was actually happening in Germany at the time, all that much, right? But yeah.
Well, and you wonder too whether or not part of the reason to make a movie like this is to sort of ask that question of America: why aren't you stepping in? Why are you still why are you
letting this happen?
Yeah. So they harass the men, they sort of throw the men around, and then the woman Hannah basically says like, why aren't you standing up for yourselves?
Yeah, why don't you fight? Why don't you
and
push
so
back?
The stormtroopers are like, well, let's let this poor woman have her tomatoes back.
Yeah, so they've stolen a bunch of fruit and vegetables from a merchant.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, we can't let this fine young lady be stolen from. Let's give her back her tomatoes.
So they'll just pelt her with these tomatoes, and
in her basket of clean laundry is no longer clean.
Exactly. So, all of her laundry gets covered in tomato guts.
Yeah.
She's like, oh man, now I got to go back and clean these again.
Yeah. So this is our picture of what life is like for the Jewish people in the ghetto.
Yes. Now we have Chaplin. He's released from the hospital finally.
Yeah, so the doctors at the hospital are saying, remember that guy with amnesia? He's escaped. And they're like,
did he escape? I thought he
was
released.
they said he disappeared.
Okay.
And then they're like, well, he wasn't that bad of a case, so we just won't worry about it. Like that was the doctors at the hospital.
Okay.
They're like, yeah, we just won't worry about that one. They're like, yeah, well, he wasn't too bad.
Well, he does end up back at his barbershop.
Yes.
And he's now, so when we saw him at the beginning, he was like decked out as a soldier with the helmet and the fatigues. But now he's in the traditional Chaplin attire.
Yeah.
Like the cane, the little
bowler hat. Yeah.
He gets back to his barbershop. I noted that there was a ton of cats outside of his barbershop.
No, when he opened the door, they came out.
Oh, were they inside?
Yeah, they were inside.
Well, either way,
like they were living.
I guess they were living there.
They were living in the shop.
They were in line waiting for a trim.
They were waiting, exactly. And he had some like hoarding up over his windows with spray painted, or
yes, he took that down.
Not spray painted, but painted with Jew and all that kind of stuff, which you see on many windows in the ghetto. Yeah. Painted by the stormtroopers. But yeah, his shop is a little dusty, and he's kind of confused because there's spider webs everywhere. Like he thinks it's been 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah. And then he notices someone doing something on his windows. So he's taking the boards off of his windows, so the windows are clean.
Yeah.
A stormtrooper seems to notice this and comes by with this paint and starts painting on the windows.
Jew.
Yeah. And he's like, what's going on here? And he comes out. And there's a little altercation because he doesn't really know how things, are
exactly
the state of the world now.
So he tries to clean it off.
Yeah,
he wipes off the W or whatever.
Yeah, he gets a rag and
and the guard, the stormtrooper, starts pushing him around. And it's here that Hannah.
Well, I think he hits the guard with the paintbrush.
That could be, yeah.
And then another guard comes and he's like, "Hey, arrest this guy!"
Right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But at a certain point, there's some slapsticky shenanigans. I didn't make note of what they all were. But
But they get into a tussle back and forth. So him and the two kind of guards.
Yes.
Right outside Hannah's window.
Yeah.
Who she leans out with like a frying pan and starts whacking them with it. And then accidentally hits the barber.
Yeah.
And he does a funny little like disoriented dance up and down the street.
Exactly.
Like
classic.
It's just like,
if it was animated, it'd be like a little
stuff.
birdie tweet,
exactly.
around his head as he staggered up and down the street.
Yeah. Anyway, eventually she ends up with her frying pan, knocking them both out. And
Yeah.
she comes down and gets Chaplin, brings him inside, and is like, what are you doing? But, thank you for, nobody seems to stand up to these guys. Thanks for that. And then he just kind of goes back to his shop, and she's like, what are you doing? Like, they're going to be looking for you. I'll go get the keys to the cellar so we can hide you. And then the troopers kind of come in and grab him while she's gone.
Yes.
They drag him out to the street.
They try to make him finish painting the Jew sign.
Yeah, and he hits with the paint again.
He throws the paint in their face.
Yeah.
Run down the road. There's more slapstick.
And like the stormtroopers are pouring into the street now from all sides.
And then there's like a large number, and then he runs the other way, and then there's another large number. He's basically being surrounded.
Yeah. And they string him up.
They're about to hang this man.
Yeah, they're going to hang him from a lamppost.
As much as it is kind of played comedically, like they string him up and he's hanging.
Yeah.
And then Schultz,
the
Commander
officer, Schultz,
kind of rolls up in a car, and all of the troops sort of like drop what they're doing and stand at attention, which allows the barber to like drop from where they're hanging him.
Yeah.
But they were about to hang this guy. So like this is this moment where this comedy film suddenly took a pretty severe turn.
A little bit of a dark
towards darkness, right? Yeah. Or at least a turn towards a reminder of how serious things are in Tomania / Germany, right?
That's right. So Schultz, because the barber had saved his life, when he discovers what they're doing, is like, no, this is my friend. This man saved my life. You will not bother you won't bother this man anymore, or his friends. And then just at the very end of the scene, Hannah throws like a flower pot off the roof and hits one of the guys. And he's like, what was that? Who did that? And Chaplin's like, oh, that was one of my friends. And he's like, oh, of course. The scene ends. So we've established that at least this little group has a bit of a reprieve from the stormtroopers in their ghetto there.
And here is where we cut to sort of Hinkle, and we get a look at
palace life,
which
is hilarious too.
Yeah, it's just like he's so busy. He's only spending a couple of seconds in each moment doing each thing.
Yeah.
It starts with him. He's doing, he's sorting his mail. Then he gets up, runs off to the next room.
He's got a guy there to like lick the envelope.
Oh, that's right.
He
does have a guy there licking his envelope.
He runs to the next room, and there's a painter and a sculptor just kind of waiting there for him.
Yep. Then he runs off to like get a preview of this bulletproof uniform they're working on, which doesn't work.
Yeah. It's perfect. And then he shoots him and the guy dies. And he's like, a little far from perfect.
Yeah. Then he's off. He's walking through a big room, briefly trips.
He trips on so instead of using the swastika, they have the double cross, which is just two X's in a circle. Anyway, like in representation of the swastika. And so that symbol is on the floor in the hall, and he trips on it.
Oh, so it's like raised.
Well, I don't think it is, but he trips on it, I think, just to, for the slapstick effect and to draw notice to like, the ridiculousness of this symbol. Yeah, no, pretty funny stuff.
And then he pops into I've got more because this goes on for a while. He stops in this room where there's a piano. He sits down. He plays piano for like 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Then he gets up and like, I don't know if he spritzes perfume in his mouth or
something.
What, but he cleans out his mouth with something. He back into his office. He asks a guard to like call for his secretary, who he asks her to take a letter and then promptly jumps on her.
Yeah.
Trying to, at the very least, get a smooch.
Yeah, and it's weird, like, guttural German throat noises, like, somehow subdue her.
She faints. Then his phone rings, so he answers it. He's called upstairs, so he leaves. He's introduced to another new invention, which is a compact parachute, which is just a hat that looks exactly like a hat-sized condom, pretty much. The guy's about to test that out. He jumps out the window, just like the bulletproof.
Yeah, failure.
It fails. He falls to his death. Then he's back into the.
Well, then he's like, "Why do you waste my time?"
Yeah, right.
These things.
Then he goes back into the painting and sculpture room, and then apparently it's like they're talking about monetary stuff. But
he gets called away immediately. Yeah. So I think this is where we first hear that they lack funds for the war. And so they can't get a loan from any banks because the banks have all said no. And so they're like, well, who can we get a loan from?
There's a guy named Epstein.
Yeah, Epstein, but he, being a Jew, is not super happy with the way they've been treating the people. So they make this little kind of pledge. They're like, well, we'll have to be nice to the Jews.
Just lay off them for a little bit until we negotiate the loan.
Yeah. And then he kind of walks out. And then things get a little nicer in the ghetto.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's right here or not long after, but there is another scene where that older Jewish man who was talking about how bad things were, it's like, it's not gonna last.
Yeah. Because, the same guy who's kind of good morning is like, oh, things are good now. Like, it's so nice here. And I think it's at this point too. So Hannah has gone to get some potatoes, or maybe this is a little bit later. She goes to get some potatoes from the potato cart guy, and she stumbles and falls and drops the potatoes. And there's some stormtroopers walking by, and they like help her up and give her potatoes back.
They do, but they help her up while like yelling at her, like. They're not very nice. It's like, watch where you're going, but they help her up, but they're very mean about it.
Really? I maybe I saw that scene and play out a little differently. It seemed like they were, trying to be nice in that way. Because after that's where she has her little moment where she's like, maybe it's not so bad here.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we could stay. Maybe we don't have to flee for a less oppressive country, right?
But what I saw there, and I mean, I could have been seeing it wrong too, but what I saw there was this idea that like, compared to how things were, like even this very small kindness seemed like a huge improvement.
Huge change.
Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, who knows? Write us a letter. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, exactly. Or an email. Or a review. Yeah.
Well, when I say letter, I do mean email.
Oh, you don't mean old school?
No, because we don't have any place that they can send us the real
we don't
mail.
have a P.O. box.
No, we don't have a P.O. box.
Okay. All right.
It's not even we're talking about until we start getting enough emails.
That's right.
Nobody wants to send us anything.
Yeah. So
so anyway, we're now Chaplin. They talk about him learning how to do makeup.
Oh, right.
Because he wants to sort of expand. He's not making much money as a barber.
Yeah, so he wants to expand
into being a beauty parlor.
Yeah.
And so
that's where the money's at. Because the men are all a lot of the men are taken away to camps,
right?
To work camps. So yeah, the money is now in doing the beauty salon stuff.
Right. So they suggest, practicing on Hannah.
Yeah.
And then I was so confused through this because I'm hearing this thing about like, he's going to do makeup, and then Hannah lies in the barber chair and he starts to like lather her up with shaving cream.
This is a funny scene because she's talking about how people are absent-minded and how she likes absent-minded people, all the while he's lathering her up.
Yeah.
And then like he's just getting ready, to like start shaving. I think he even kind of like does one swipe, and she's like, yeah,
I wonder why women never grow whiskers.
Yeah, and then he's like, oh, like he just realizes that he's working on a woman and not a man. Like, it's a hilarious scene altogether.
It is pretty funny. Yeah. It is a little bit flirty too. Like she's a little giggly through it. And
even the first time they meet, there's a little bit of chemistry.
That's
there,
true,
right? Yeah,
but this dials it up a little bit more too.
Yeah, well, and especially so. We cut to like the end of the makeover.
Yeah,
right?
And now she's looking at herself in the mirror.
It's the reveal, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so cute now."
Cute.
Yeah. And then she's kind of looking at him, and she's like, "If you kind of did this to yourself, you might even be handsome."
Yeah, I think her line was, "If you got fixed up, you'd look handsome," which is one of those backhanded compliment things where it's like, I mean, you're not right now.
Yeah,
you're pretty scrubby right now.
You could get there.
You could get there if you tried.
But he seems to take it well.
Yes, and then this actually, according to my notes, is when the potato moment happens.
Yeah.
Then we cut back to Hinkle. He is dictating a note to his secretary. I personally, this was one of my favorite scenes, this little gag where he rambles off a long sequence in German, and then
she types like one thing.
She types like one thing, and then he says like one word in German, and then she types for like a whole minute.
And like has to push the typewriter back and keep going.
And then he's like, period. Then you hear her go ding.
Yeah. That was pretty funny.
And then he goes off to try to sign the letter, but none of his pens work. He keeps pulling them out.
Yeah. Like they're stuck together.
They don't work.
Yeah.
He ends up
that pen gag recurs at another moment, I think.
Does it?
When he has to sign the war order. later on
maybe
in the
it does,
movie.
yeah.
Like it's just, I mean, the whole kind of farce around like how he really is just a small man who can't do anything right and
Yeah.
get anything correct. Right?
Exactly.
Like it's pretty funny throughout the movie.
He ends up ripping the letter up. He gets so frustrated. I'm not even sure what the letter was supposed to be.
I think it was like something about how they were gonna like order the Jews to be less citizens that are going after the Jews, and then he's talking with Garbage about then they got to go after brunettes because his secretary was a brunette, and she messed up the letter.
And then, he's left alone in his office and he does this little romantic dance.
Yeah, with his
globe, which is also a balloon.
Yeah.
That goes on for a few minutes.
And it's pretty funny. Like,
it is pretty funny.
Like his little like hacky sack with the balloon. And he gets on the desk and he's hitting it with his butt. And
every time I saw like one of these sort of extended physical comedy bits, especially like when he's like bumping it with his bum and things like that, it really very much reminded me of like Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Of that sort of, or when he's doing the stagger down the road. Like those are all sort of very, and I wonder, I don't know. I imagine it's like animation was following the guidance of what live action was doing and just sort of maybe dialing it up.
Yeah.
Because you could get away with that in animation as you can do it a little bit more slapstick, a little bit more extreme. But a lot of it just reminded me of Looney Tunes animation.
Yeah.
And then he accidentally pops the balloon.
Yeah.
I think, which is an important bit of symbolism.
Yeah.
Then we cut back to the barber shop, which is another fun scene where he is shaving a man in time to
the music
Hungarian dance number 5 or whatever it is.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. He speeds up and slows down. And it's pretty
shave, wipe,
yeah.
shave, wipe. Very well done.
Yeah.
Then we learn that Epstein refuses to lend Hinkle the money. And so Hinkle decides to sort of
really take this out on the Jews,
and do something, in his words, medieval in the ghetto. One of the officers advises him, I guess this is Schultz, right?
Yeah, this is Schultz. He's like, I don't think this is the time to be doing this.
It'll demoralize the
country,
the Tomanian people. And so Hinkle's like, send this man to the concentration camp.
Yeah.
Then we are back to the ghetto for the barber to take Hannah on their little date.
Yeah.
It's not very long.
It's not a long date.
Not a long date.
But that's because there's like
this is the night that
a public announcement.
Things are about to heat up in the ghetto.
Yeah. So they had been talking, I think, a little bit about how nice, the ghetto was now and that kind of stuff. And
yes.
And when they go out on their date, I mean, the streets are full of people and it's, it's how you would anticipate things were before the crackdown in the ghetto.
Yeah.
And everything is very kind of nice and people are all happy and there's music and they're walking down the street arm in arm. And yeah, like it's just a very like, first date kind of feel. And then they stop and even the people in the ghetto, I mean, there's a guy, he's selling Henkel buttons.
Yeah.
Because the people are now like, oh, maybe Henkel's not so bad.
And so, the barber and Hannah, they stop, they're buying the buttons. And as they're like mid-purchase, so I think he's even like putting his on, that's when the loudspeakers start blaring out this news.
Schultz has been arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he takes the pin off and they give them back. And then probably
all the whole street clears.
Yes, all of the
shutters up,
closing up and taken off. And
and it's just the two of them on the street and they're kind of like, oh, we need to get indoors. Yeah. And they kind of run up and down and again, very slapstick, right? As the PA continues with the announcement, right? It'll kind of tapers off and then it gets loud again. And every time he kind of, Chaplin is like makes a flinch or a move or hides himself or whatever. But anyway, the stormtroopers do come and find them on the street.
They do. But very briefly, they're reminded that, oh no, we're not supposed to do anything to this neighborhood, to this area because Schultz, he's a buddy of Schultz. So they briefly think that there's some relief.
Yeah.
But then word gets back to the stormtroopers that Schultz has been imprisoned.
So we see in the courtyard the people, Chaplin and his group, they're kind of relieved. But then we don't see, but we hear outside the guards in the street have you heard Schultz has been arrested? And then all of a sudden the tune changes and they start chanting, we want the barber. We want the barber. And as they start to kind of march back in to find Charlie.
And so basically they say to the barber, you've got to hide.
Yeah.
He wants to stand up, but like, no, take care of yourself, go hide. Sort of Hannah takes his hand and
I think they they go up to the roof.
They go up to the roof. Yeah.
Yeah. That, which is, I guess, the best hiding spot. Like,
I guess.
Yeah.
That becomes it does become a common hiding spot.
Yeah, that's right.
So they end up kind of hiding up there. And then they hear this sort of violence and chaos from down below. And then there's an explosion.
Which is his shop next door.
Which is his shop.
Yeah. And it goes up in flames.
Yeah.
And so they kind of sit there lamenting that. And I think they spend basically the night up there because then it looks like it's now the morning. The shop is no longer on fire. It's a smoldering ruin. Yeah. So things have turned overnight.
And one of the old men sort of from the ghetto comes up and is like, the coast is clear, come back down. And they also learn that Schultz has managed to escape.
Yes.
Is being hid in the ghetto.
In Mr. Schenkel, who's the kind of the old grumpy guy from
Mr.
before.
Schenkel.
Yeah.
Didn't catch his name, but yeah.
Yeah.
And that there's meant to be a meeting that night.
Yes.
A
midnight meeting.
He has requested specifically that the barber attend.
That's right. And then this is where we find out about the pudding. So as they're talking about this meeting, Hannah and I think Mrs. Schenkel, they're in the kitchen kind of talking about it, and Hannah's like, I saw this Schultz putting a coin in
one of the
puddings, but don't worry, I fixed it.
Yes.
And we're like, okay, what does that mean exactly? So we flash to the meeting and Commander Schultz is saying that, we must stand up against, this tyrannical regime.
And someone is going to he has a plan.
Yeah.
Someone needs to sacrifice their life.
To basically suicide bomb the capital or the palace.
Yeah.
And so he tells them,
there's a
coin in one of these puddings.
And whoever has it needs to be the one who sacrifices his life.
Yeah.
And so now we get another.
But he obviously can't do it because he's too well known at the palace, right? So he can't be the one. So it must be one of these guys at the table. Anyway.
So now we end up with this gag of because everyone has a coin in their pudding.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's the gag of Chaplin handing all the plates back.
But trying to see which one weighs.
He's trying to weigh the plates and he keeps
make sure he gets the lightest one.
Yeah. And then everyone has a coin.
Everyone has a coin.
So he swallows his.
Yeah.
The guy next to him takes that bite, puts it on his plate, and he bites it again. And he's like, another coin. He swallows it again. And the coins just keep getting passed around. So four of the guys basically give their coins to Chaplin, who swallows them.
Yep.
And he's kind of like, he
starts
trying to swallow them and his throat is like chinking.
Well, I thought he was hiccuping. He was like hiccuping and then he did this little clink as they're clinking together.
And then the old man, Mr. Schenkel, at the end, who wasn't really part of this switching around of coins,
he opens
his
coin.
And he's like, oh, gentlemen, it is me.
He's the only one who's like willing to do what needs to be done. But that's the moment that Hannah comes in and is like, no, because you all got coins, you liars.
And just as Chaplin like spits out his coins,
he just hiccups more of them out. Like,
he spits all four out and then he kind of puts them in his pocket. He's like, whoa, puts them in his pocket. Yeah. And basically Hannah's saying like, you're all idiots and you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, oh yeah.
Killing people and blowing up buildings is not the way to accomplish this.
Yeah, they're just basically no better than the Germans.
Yeah. We get a newspaper little montage telling us that they're looking for Schultz in the ghetto. So now they know that Schultz is hiding there.
Yeah.
The barber is wanted for questioning.
Yes.
So once again.
Every knock on the door, they're kind of panicking here. Charlie throws himself into a steamer trunk with the door, and they knock on the door. And then the one guy who is the good morning guy goes out and he's like, oh, he sees the stormtroopers out in the street searching
houses, going door to door.
He runs back. Tells them. And then they're all trying to get in the steamer trunk when
yes.
But
then they go to the next room and they have to start packing up Schultz's stuff.
Yeah.
This is a great bit too, actually.
Trying to pack up his stuff.
They pack up his stuff. They put like the whole tea tray
in his
in his suitcase, and
and-
he's like, "No, it doesn't." They
and
finally
he's
get
got a
everything-
hat box and golf clubs.
He's
Like, what? How
the
did he
golf bug-
escape?
Like the golf bug clubs was my favorite
Yeah.
bit. Like they're going up the stairs, and he's like, "Oh, my golf clubs."
Yeah.
It's like, how you were arrested? You were
Yeah.
going to a concentration camp. You broke out,
and you have
before
golf
coming
clubs
to the ghetto.
of
Did you
Elise
stop
and hat
home for your golf clubs? Like that was honestly
Yeah.
probably my favorite gag.
That
of
was
the
some
whole
white
movie.
person shit right there.
Yes, exactly.
My golf clubs.
It's just a random thing to, and they're the whole friggin' bag of them.
Yeah. Pretty funny. And then he's got the hat box.
He's got the hat
which
box.
comes open, and they put the hat box upside down over
On
top of
Chaplin.
Chaplin's head, so
Yeah.
now he can't really see as he's going up.
So
the
yeah,
stairs.
they get up to the roof, and he starts like wandering out on a girder.
Yeah.
Goes to set down, I think, the golf clubs.
No, it's like a smaller bag at
Is it
first.
a smaller bag?
Yeah.
Tries to set it down on the ground, which isn't there because he's on a girder, and just drops into the ground below.
Yeah, and he's like, my bag. And he's like, oh, no, I
it's
just
right
set
here.
it down. And he's reaching. He's like, And then he's like, look where you are.
So he lifts up the
Helmet
box.
or hat box. Yeah.
and sees he's standing on a girder above the ground, and he begins the whole, again, the slapstick of, whoa, I'm
Yeah.
going to fall down.
He's like, don't drop my other bag. And he drops the other bag. And then he drops the golf clubs. And
Yep.
he's like, hurry, they're going to see you. So then they're running around on the roofs. And then,
Yeah, they run from one roof to another.
Yeah.
The barber slides down sort of the
the
tilted
roofing
roof,
tiles. Yeah.
smashes through a window.
Yeah,
Or a
like a
skylight.
pretty big skylight.
Yeah.
onto the bed of some other
Some
couple.
random dude.
And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry to disturb you." And
Yeah.
he goes out the bedroom door, and there's soldiers in the stairwell. And he's like, comes back in, shuts the door. He's like, "I think I'll be disturbing you once more." And and he
Tries to climb back out through the window, but
Yeah.
there's more guards there to grab him and pull him out.
That's right.
So now the barber and Schultz are both caught.
Yes, and they're going to be going off to a prison camp.
Then we get a scene where it seems like the rest of the people in the ghetto have made it to
Austerlich. Yeah,
Los Austerlich.
Austerlich. Yeah, so they're, like this is Mr. Schenkel, like basically the little group that was in the ghetto that
Yeah.
we've seen throughout the movie. They've got a wagon and, they're crossing the border and they find this beautiful free country.
And I think it's worth noting, because we didn't mention this at the time, but like when Hannah and the barber were sort of hiding out overnight on the roof, they did talk about this idea of like
leaving together,
leaving the city and finding a nice place in the country,
starting a farm,
getting a chicken farm.
Yeah, because there's lots of
There's
money
lots
in
of money in
chickens.
chickens, which is a weird reference when I think about how like there are certain Republicans in the U.S. right now who are suggesting people get their own chickens to combat the price of
eggs that they're pretty much responsible
Jesus.
for. Yeah. I mean, like I
Who
said,
knew this movie would be so prescient?
it's
about
very
today?
relevant.
It's
Very relevant. Yeah.
But they've found this place. It looks to be more of like a vineyard. There's lots of there's little grapevines and stuff like that.
Because they are like in one scene they're picking fruit. I think right and making crates of fruit. So
yeah.
Whether that's grapes or whatever, but yeah, I mean, it seems like this idyllic life where they're traipsing through the fields.
Yeah.
And like everything's fine now in Austerlich.
And Hannah writes the barber a letter
Yeah.
saying basically that she's waiting for him to be released so they can be together again.
Which he somehow gets in his German prison camp.
Somehow. Yeah. Now we cut back to Hinkle in his sort of like war room or whatever.
Yeah.
And he hears that they are now the military. They have got the money. The military is ready to march
Ready to
on
go, yeah.
Austerlich, which I'm assuming is meant to be Austria.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Or France and Austria and
Combined,
like,
maybe? I don't know exactly what the machinations of pre-World War II was, but I assumed that it was. I assumed it so much that the original spelling of Austerlich was AUST.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think Austria, for the most part, willingly
Oh, really?
kind of joined at the time. I mean,
well, it didn't look like there was much of a fight when they do finally take it over.
Yeah, that's
They just
true.
roll
Yeah,
in, basically,
So
and then
could
give
be
a
more
speech.
Austria than France. But yeah, so then he hears that Napolini has already amassed troops on the border, and now he's like, oh,
Yeah.
what are we going to do? So
just the moment before, he had pinned a medal onto Field Marshal Herring, and now he's like, "No, you don't."
Who has a chest full of medals?
Chest full of medals. Right? So now he's so mad at him, he pulls off that medal, and then all of the other medals, and then he starts ripping off the dude's
like his buttons and like down to his undershirt, and he's taking his suspender buttons.
Exactly.
Yeah, just super comedic in the moment, and then he wants to declare war.
He wants to declare war on Napoleon.
Yeah,
or Napolini. Sorry.
And so he has to sign the war order, and he can't find a pen again.
Yep. And then while all that is going on, he gets a call from Napolini.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not here.
He's
and
not
my
here.
Voice is sore."
Yeah.
And like, it's just very, very funny stuff here.
And I think it's who was it that was on the phone with?
Garbage answers the phone, and he's like, "Yeah, he's not here.
He's a little hoarse right now."
Yeah, it's like, no, it just means he can't talk.
Yeah, he hasn't turned into a small horse.
Classic joke.
And so
Napolini wants to discuss that.
Yeah, so Hinkle invites him to
Tumania.
Yeah. And he agrees.
Yeah. And then the train shows up.
Then Napolini arrives by train, and we have another sort of sequence of like.
I mean, that's the whole Napolini visit is just
pretty slapstick. Yeah,
it's almost like the opening montage of just scene after scene of like slapstick gags. So this is the train, and the train goes past where they're standing to meet him.
Yeah, they're waiting for him to arrive so they can roll out the red carpet.
Yeah.
So the train arrives and it stops
in the wrong spot.
Yeah, so they chase it down to roll out the red carpet, but then it begins to correct itself and it rolls back the other way.
And they keep running around, and hilarious stuff.
Eventually, they are managed to get the carpet lined up with the train door.
And when they try and shake hands, they're doing
exactly
like the salute and then the shake hands, and they keep missing. It's just hilarious stuff.
Then there's a moment for a photograph of the two dictators together, but they keep trying to
like out-posture and out-maneuver each other.
It's technically upstaging, where like you're stepping back and then forcing the other one to turn towards you, and then going back and back and back until they get steamed.
Yeah, they get right up to the tracks, and then the engine is like. It's good stuff. Yeah.
Then what comes next?
They get to the palace, and so Garbage is telling Hinkle about the psychological ways to, impress your power upon Napolini. So they're going to give him the small chair, and he's going to come in from the other door and have to walk through the whole room. And
then there's
your statue is there.
The bust of Hinkle, so he's always glaring at him.
Yeah, exactly. And then so Napolini, he comes in the wrong door and immediately like slaps him on the back, and they're like just thrown out. And then he's sitting in the short chair, and he's like, "I don't like this. I don't like stand." And just very, very funny scene. Like all the interactions between the two are just hilarious.
And then there's a bit of a party later that night.
Yeah, it's like a royal ball or something like that, or grand ball. And we have the little dance. So
Hinkle dances with Mrs. Napolini.
Yeah. And he's like, "Your dancing was amazing. It was great. It was good. It was okay." Yeah.
He works his way down from like amazing
to like okay, and then he leaves.
Yeah. Kisses a ring, then polishes, and then away he goes. He and Napolini go off to sort of a little private room they go to the buffet.
Well, do they go kind of somewhere, and then they go to the buffet. But yeah, so when they get to
Napolini wants to talk someplace where they can just get a sandwich and sort of like talk things out. So they go over to the buffet,
and they kind of kick everyone else out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
like we're getting into the food fight scene.
Yes,
here,
exactly.
Like, just hilarious.
They want to negotiate a treaty between their two countries.
Yeah.
And the sticking point is when
the troops
are going to leave. Yeah. So Napolini, he's saying, "You sign the treaty, and then our troops will leave."
And Hinkle's like, "You're absolutely right. When your troops leave, I will sign the treaty."
Yeah. Presumably because each one is waiting for the other one to sign so that they can invade.
Yeah.
And this is what causes the tension here to increase and build towards this food fight.
Well, also, so there's the English mustard, which is like
very spicy
mustard. And so, nobody really wants that. And Hinkle's trying to order strawberries with like whipped cream.
Yeah.
And while they're kind of negotiating about this treaty, the cream gets moved and the mustard gets moved
around. So Hinkle ends up glopping all of
this hot mustard onto his strawberries, and then he eats that, and he's like, "Ah!" And then distracted, Napolini's like, "What's wrong with that guy?" Well, he's putting the mustard on his sandwich, and then he takes a bite, and they're both, "Ah!" It's just hilarious. And then they get into this food fight after they kind of calm down, and they get back to the treaty, and then they get into the food fight.
But in the end, Hinkle does agree to sign the treaty.
That's right.
Because he's advised.
Because I think Garbage says something like, just sign it and we'll invade. Yeah.
Anyway.
Exactly.
From there, we learn that the Barber and Schultz have escaped the concentration camp. Both of them having previously escaped incarceration or hospitals. They're escaped dressed as officers.
That's right.
Right? And they're going to walk down the road.
Yeah, they're just going to fake it till they make it.
I think the goal for them is to try to get into Austerlitz, right?
Yes. They're heading for the border. There's like one town kind of in their way, but they're just going to kind of stroll right through. They're not going to go through the woods.
Yeah. And then we have this very kind of random moment of Hinkle in a little teeny rowboat, whatever.
Yeah, so he's preparing to launch his invasion, and he's stepped out to do some duck hunting or something like that.
Yeah, basically the idea is they're going to just roll into Austerlitz.
Yeah, but he's taking a pause.
A little bit of duck hunting.
Yeah, a little bit.
Shoots his gun, falls out of his boat, wades to shore, where he is mistaken for the Barber.
Yeah, because there's guards out in the woods looking for the Barber.
Because he escaped.
And they're like, where's Schultz? What have you right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they haul Hinkle away. Just hilarious stuff.
Meanwhile, the Barber and Schultz, both looking like, esteemed officers in the army, are walking down the road. They pass by, a handful of troops
who kind of like do a double take.
Yeah, they're like, oh my God, that's our glorious leader.
Yeah.
And then run back to the town or the city.
Yeah, they're like, he's coming, he's here.
So everybody pours out into the streets like in formation to like have an opening for him to walk down. Everyone's like, saluting and hailing, and
he always flinches when they do
Yes, exactly. I think they encounter Garbage at the
No, it's a different guy.
It's a different guy.
Yeah, because Garbage would know.
I guess that's probably probably.
Yeah. It's a different guy, and he's like, Schultz, good to see you. Glad you're back with us. Yeah. And they're like, I think we're ready to roll.
Yeah.
So let's go invade.
So they get in the car, and as they roll away, the Barber leans over to Schultz and is like, where are we going? And Schultz is like, you're invading Austerlitz. And he faints.
Yeah.
That's a good line. Like, you're invading this country.
And he's like,
don't really know it. So the Barber accidentally leads the invasion of Austerlitz.
Yeah.
They end up getting to some sort of
giant square
that's just filled with people who are sort of waiting to hear him speak.
They're cheering.
And one of the other officers sort of gets up and basically says that we've annexed this country and our leader is now in charge, and you will do what he says.
Yeah, and there's a bit in there about free speech and democracy haven't worked or something. So we've managed to take them away to give you a better life. Or,
right.
This kind of like fascist speak. And then, we turn to the Barber, and Schultz is kind of like,
you have to say something.
I think you got to speak.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want, I think you have to, like, it's our only hope. And he's like, hope, hey?
Hope. Yeah.
And then we launch into the speech.
He gets up and gives that famous speech, which you have. I don't know if you want to read a portion of it, or
I can read a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Hang on. All right. So this is how he starts. He says, I'm sorry, but I don't want to be emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone, if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there is room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. So then he talks a little bit about how greed has poisoned men's souls. Our knowledge has made us cynical. Machinery has given abundance but left us in want socially. So we need more humanity than just machinery. Instead of cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. And he talks a little bit about how, radio and kind of the inventions of the time have helped unite us, but they need to not be victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people with this technology, right? And so he wants to give hope. And he says, to those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. And then he talks a little bit about the soldiers and not being a machine and giving yourself over to these brutes that despise you. He talks a little bit about a Bible verse, which as a Jewish barber, he's reading from the New Testament.
Oh, no.
Yeah. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke, it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man, nor a group of men, but in all men. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. I think that's one of the real relevant points now about the lie of, progress that never gets fulfilled. But yeah, so dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where the science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite. Yeah. So pretty powerful, especially now. Like, you see lots of stuff out there that it's just as relevant today as it was then. Probably more powerful then in the sense that not a lot of people in the US knew what was happening in Europe, or
that's probably true,
or as kind of aware of it.
Yeah.
Right? They were still in that isolationist period, and as the war really started to pick up steam in 1940,
I think they were probably, rumors, right? Rumors.
Yeah. Well, there would have been some news coverage of,
but again, it's hard to imagine or hard to remember how much slower news and information traveled.
Oh, yeah.
Back then. Like, we're so used to being flooded with the information of what's going on friggin' everywhere at the drop of a hat. That to think that, something of the caliber of what was going on in Germany could be almost unknown through good swaths of at least North America.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, and that's really where the film ends.
I think he's got a few words at the end for Hannah.
Yeah,
and it does cut back
directly to Hannah.
Because and there is a moment that we missed talking about where some stormtroopers arrive at the vineyard and sort of
kind of
thrash
knock
everybody
them down
and beat everybody up. But there's a moment after that where we cut back as the barber is sort of speaking directly to Hannah through his address.
Yeah, he says, "Hannah, if you can hear me, the clouds are parting."
And she gets
look up,
and
Hannah, look up,
and she looks up to the sky, and that's sort of like the moment of hopefully hope on the horizon.
That's right.
And then it's just over, because movies in 1940 didn't have end credits. They showed all the credits at the beginning, and just ended.
It just says the end,
and then it's over.
Yeah,
it's always weird for me, but that was The Great Dictator, and I really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it as well. I mean, I know the term dark comedy gets associated with it, but it is flat out like slapstick.
It is
quite funny throughout.
I think that the only real dark moment for me is like when he's being strung up. Like that's as dark as it gets.
Well, I guess there's some jokes about like violence against the people and that kind of stuff, right? That are a little bit darker, but I mean, it is very,
but for the most part,
very like light.
It is not what I would think of as a dark comedy coming at it from a modern standard,
No, not at all. But yeah, I mean, the physical comedy is outstanding.
Yeah.
And the speech at the end is great. It's very powerful, which I think at the time kind of detracted a little bit from the film because it made it less of a comedic venture and turned it more political.
I do have to say that from a critical perspective, it feels a little heavy-handed to me. And maybe it would have worked better at the time when that sort of thing in a movie was maybe new, but I just prefer a subtler sort of message in a movie myself.
Yeah. Well, so what I had heard after watching was that apparently he changed the ending of the movie. Mm-hmm. So they had started, filming, and it was, I'm just going to lampoon this kind of new character over in Europe because they don't really like kind of what's going on. And then as the war started to progress and things were deteriorating in Europe, that's where Chaplin was like, no, we need to take a different stance.
And don't get me wrong, like I respect that he did that, and it was definitely a better choice than just ending on a slightly different
Well, it's supposed to be
slapstick
like a
scene,
zany car chase
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah.
across Austerlitz. So, yeah, I mean, but it definitely changed the flavor and tone of the movie overall to
Sure.
end in
Sure.
that way. Certainly there's a bit of hope, right?
Yeah.
As looking up at the sky and,
Yeah.
hopeful music is playing and then we end on that. But yeah, I think for a people that weren't really all that knowledgeable about what was happening in Europe at the time, it could have fallen a little flat, right?
Yeah.
And been, like you said, a little heavy-handed and overtly political. But apparently it was his most commercially successful film as well.
Apparently,
so, people did go see it. I would imagine that Hitler probably would not have been super happy with his portrayal in the film.
He watched the movie twice by himself, entirely alone. And Chaplin, when he heard that, it reportedly said he'd give anything to know what he thought of it, which, I mean, I don't know if I'd give anything, but I'd be very curious to know.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I would not go out of my way to find out. Yeah.
The film, when released in France in 1945, became the most popular film of the year with admissions of 8,280,553. The film was voted at number 24 on the list of 100 greatest films by the prominent French magazine Cahiers du Cinéma. In 2008 and 2010, The Guardian considered it the 22nd best comedy film of all time. The film was voted number 16 on the list of the 100 greatest comedies of all time by a poll of 253 film critics from 52 countries conducted by the BBC in 2017. Chaplin biographer Jeffrey Vance concludes his lengthy examination of the film in his book Chaplin, Genius of the Cinema by asserting the film's importance among the great film satires. Vance writes, Chaplin's The Great Dictator survives as a masterful integration of comedy, politics, and satire. It stands as Chaplin's most self-consciously political work and the cinema's first important satire. But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a lot. I can understand the reasoning for it being banned in the countries it was banned in at the time, but obviously I'm never going to, support a fascist government cracking down on freedoms to ensure that they can remain a fascist government. Boo.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're in a fascist kind of regime, when works of satire and anything that's poking fun at leadership or at the people in charge is banned. Like, if you can, that's probably one of the best signs, I think, of democracy is our leaders understanding, that they're going to be the butt of jokes and that not everyone's going to like them, right? Like that's kind of part and parcel with democracy and being a public figure.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It's certainly been a way of life in North America for quite some time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's kind of like a sure sign of fascism or
some kind of shenanigans going on in the
right
government there.
When suppressing things that don't portray, especially parodies, right, and shutting that kind of stuff down. But I mean, just a movie that has a lot of, I think, things that were probably very new at the time in terms of, tropes and things that have been repeated through the ages, right? Like some of these gags of, oh, he's a little hoarse right now. Like, the typewriter gag, like there's versions of that kind of stuff that have evolved through film, for generations since this movie and some of, Charlie Chaplin's silent film work where, he's, maybe not invented this stuff, but certainly popularized a lot of these things that we kind of take for granted today or have seen, various iterations of. But yeah, seeing kind of the original version of it and, how it still holds up as like laugh out loud funny. Like it's, this movie is, very old.
Yeah.
And it still stands up, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. So 85 years later,
fuck yeah.
Yeah. Like it is still pretty darn funny.
Yeah.
Like, you see the elements of things that you see in like National Lampoon movies and other satire in there, that have been now done over and over again. But yeah, like this was some of the original lambasting of public figures out there for the world. And just kind of neat to go back and revisit that.
So history. I'm going to go ahead and give it 4 Hail Hinkles out of 5.
Yeah, I think I will give it probably 4.5 falling out of a boat trying to shoot a duck out of 5.
I gotta limit it to 4 because I don't love slapstick.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And that's part of the reason I think that I never really bothered with Chaplin stuff before. It's his style of comedy just doesn't really appeal to me. And even within this film, it's mostly the slapstick stuff that I'm least impressed by. I prefer some of the more talky gags.
Yeah.
My favorite joke is the one about the friggin' golf clubs, right? But still, like, quality film. And, you have to have, I think, respect for, an artist who doesn't have to do a film like this, right? You could just continue just making random slapstick stuff to make people laugh.
And he was still making silent films
up until this,
during the talkie era, right? Yeah.
But you don't have to step into a political conversation, because that's...
Yeah. I mean, they could have ended it with the zany car chase and been done with it, right?
It's dangerous as a comedian to step into political conversations, especially in a situation like this where, as it was, gearing up, World War II was beginning to happen. You don't know how the fight's going to go. You don't know who's going to come away the winner. And, depending on who wins, they may not like the way your film portrayed them, right? Like, so
but that's the stand that you especially as someone with ostensibly high morals and principle,
which is why I say, like,
this, to
total respect to him for standing up and doing it, because he didn't have to. Anyway, any final thoughts on the film?
I mean, I'm a fan of slapstick. I really enjoyed it. I thought the gags were really well done, and especially the little like asides where he's the only one who kind of notices that it's a gag.
I
like that kind of stuff, and especially this being kind of some of the original slapstick kind of ever really put out there. I don't know, I really enjoyed that. Obviously as a satire, I think it works. Still very relevant in terms of how we see these powerful guys are actually just these small men who can't get their pen to work and behind closed doors, right? Like, that kind of stuff I think is still relevant today, as well as the speech at the end. I mean, it's a good speech, still holds very true in this day and age. Maybe not as much in Canada, but certainly in America in general and the world. I mean, we're in this point where things like this, there's elements of fascism and
popping up all over the place
that are rising again. We seem to have forgotten some of this history. So revisiting stuff like this, I think, is a healthy reminder to go,
absolutely,
hey, like, maybe valuable. Let's ask a few more questions.
A little bit here, guys. Let's just slow down on some things and have a conversation.
Yeah. So, if nothing less, if you don't even like slapstick,
still
relevant for that. Still worth watching.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
As always, you can find all of our stuff over at blablablamedia.com, BLAHBLAHBLAH media.com. Links to merch stores, Facebook pages, all of our podcasts.
Yeah.
Patreon.
Yeah. And our ways to comment and
email us at badfin@gmail.com. Buy us a copy if you want. And next episode we'll be doing something that
we'll tell you about that.
We'll do something, whether it's the thing we're planning or some other thing that's jammed in to kill time. Time will tell. But until then, I've been Todd Sullivan.
I've been Peter Ammon. Go read a fucking book.
Yeah.